After the global community was impacted by the severe pandemic, the importance of healthcare and healthcare IT sectors has been felt like never before. Like there has been a lot of healthcare startups who have come across and they are doing really, really well. So in the recent years, we have seen that healthcare has become an integral part of the Indian business ecosystem. As healthcare was always a very noble profession, it added to the humanity and things like that. There are these successful healthcare entrepreneurs who are actually making a valuable contribution towards the different economies around the world. And we at Medicircle, as a healthcare media company, we are interviewing these healthcare CEOs to know more about their contribution and also about their journey, so as to inspire the younger generation who is watching the video and also to know the recent facts which are happening in the healthcare industry. Hello, I'm Smita Kumar, and you're watching Medicircle. Today, in this top CEOs in the healthcare, we have Subir Batra with us. Subir is a seasoned professional and entrepreneur with a wealth of domestic and international experience. He has some senior management positions in both consulting and industry, having the right mix of strategy and operational experience. He has advised large Indian and multinational companies on their strategic initiatives, sales and distribution setups, and operational efficiencies also. As an entrepreneur, he has set up multiple companies in the healthcare space. He is an alumnus of BITS Pilani and IIM Bangalore. He is presently attached with the SafeOps Surgical and Surgical Disposables and also Docuses Healthcare India. Hi Subir, welcome to Medicircle, Top CEOs in Healthcare series.
Yes, Peter. Thanks for the introduction.
So Subir, we would like to know that there are three important challenges in the healthcare industry, being health accessibility, affordability, and availability. Healthcare industries के बहुत सारे challenges हैं. During this corona pandemic, we have seen a lot of healthcare coming, applications and startups coming and changing the way the healthcare was pre-COVID and post-COVID. इसलिए कि इन्होंने बहुत सारे जो applications या बहुत सारे products and offerings आए, इन्होंने कई हद तक जो अफोर्डेबिलिटी, एक्सेसिबिलिटी और अवेलेबिलिटी के इश्यूज थे उसको सॉल्व करने के, उसके जो बीच जो गैप है उसको ब्रिज करने की कोशिश की है. सो व्हाट इज अकॉर्डिंग टू यू आर द सॉल्यूशंस टू इरेडिकेट दिस इश्यूज? इन इश्यूज को दूर करने के आपका नजरिया क्या है? किस तरह से हम ये जो मेजर चैलेंजेस है हेल्थ केयर को उसको काउंटरफिट कर सकते हैं?
स्मिता, देखिए ये जो आपने चैलेंजेस बताए, एक्सेसिबिलिटी, अफोर्डेबिलिटी एंड अवेलेबिलिटी, these are in some way linked. You solve one problem, you end up solving a lot of the other problems. The primary reason I see these problems in the healthcare industry is, unlike other industries, this is probably the only industry where there is a supply shortage. You look at every other industry, जहाँ demand बढ़ जाता है वहाँ supply आ जाती है. और जब supply आ जाती है तो आपके prices कम हो जाते हैं, affordability हो जाती है, लोगों तक सामान पहुंचता है, तो एक्सेसिबिलिटी हो जाती है और जो क्वालिटी है वो भी सुधर जाती है फॉर द सेम प्राइस. The question that we have to ask ourselves is this: why is supply not increasing? Why don't we have more doctors? Why don't we have more medical facilities? Why don't we have more nurses, healthcare workers? Why don't we have more beds in this country? And once we solve that problem, बाकी सारी problem solve हो जाएंगे. आज के दिन में आप देखिए हमारे पास we have one doctor for 10,000 people. World average around one doctor for about 1.5 thousand people. Similarly is the case with everything else. और ये issue क्यों हो रहा है? ये issue इसलिए नहीं होता we don't have manpower. India is the most populous country in the world. Why is India not producing? क्यों? Because it is so difficult to set up a medical college. You don't have enough seats. If you don't have enough seats, you will not produce enough doctors. That is at the base level. The same problem is as we go higher. You want to do an MD, you want to do a DM, there is very, very little availability, which restricts the supply. So I think the challenge before us, and this is primarily more of a government challenge, is how do we increase the number of seats? How do we get more medical colleges in place? Engineering में ऐसा problem नहीं है, law में ऐसा problem नहीं है, तो it beats me. यहाँ पर क्यों? Do we believe that Indians are not good enough? Most Indians are not good enough to be doctors. I don't think that is the case.
Because I think the best
Um,
doctors outside are actually serving from India. They depend on
exactly.
Indian brains.
And that really brings me to the other point that I've always been wondering. India is probably the only country in the world that takes pride in sending its people abroad and saying that we have exported our best people for the best organization for the best countries. I don't see any other country doing that.
Mhm.
China takes its people abroad and they want them to come back. India says, why is the US, India actually lobbies the US to give our people H1B visas, to give them green cards, to give them citizenship. And this is something that I just don't understand. Why do we want to export our people? Why don't we export our services that are run by people here? Why don't we export our best products? There's some people are coming back and they're doing quite well after that, but that is just a trickle. So that I think that kind of mentality has to change. The best people go abroad,
Surely.
and and when you're talking of availability, we know what availability is. India is again a very big country. I think most of this has to be solved by the government. I think either you incentivize the private sector to reach out to people, or um, or have the government do it. The other thing that we can do when we're talking of availability and affordability is, you know, when we talk of 1 in 10,000 doctors, these are the MBBS doctors. India has a rich history of other kinds of doctors. So we have BHMS, we have homeopathy, we have Ayurveda, we have a lot of other things. We have alternative medicine. Why don't we promote alternative medicine? Why is there such a resistance to alternative medicine within the fraternity in India itself, where we have seen the benefits of alternative medicine? We have seen that for a lot of cases, it's probably more effective than the what we call the modern or the Western medicine. That's one. The second is, why don't we train people who are practicing this medicine in allopathy? You go to any, I've been to a lot of these um, small towns and cities and villages, and I see a lot of the practicing doctors there are not trained in modern medicine. They are homeopaths who are doing allopathic medicine. There are Ayurveda practitioners who are doing that. So what I'm saying is, why don't we give them a training? Why don't we give them a diploma course? Why don't we give them some kind of intervention which allows them, gives them the tools they require to to practice this kind of medicine? It's not that it's already not happening. It's already happening. You just want to equip them better. And again, there is a lot of resistance because of a lot of vested interests.
But I
The
think there's
third
a
thing
lot
you could
of
do,
resistance from the MBBS students itself that if we are doing that for
exactly.
5+ years, how can these people with just a 2 year degree course or 1 year degree course are equivalent to
Why
MBBS? I think government
why
has,
why can't they do it?
there was
And see, is basic primary medicine so complicated? I think that is a myth. It is not complicated. I have seen how doctors work. We've all seen how doctors work. Of course, there's a lot of knowledge that goes into it, but the basics are still the same. With
definitely.
training, people will pick up. It's a question of how much training. Of course, you don't get them to a tertiary level, uh, facility, but you can get them to the primary, right?
Definitely.
You can make it much better than what they're doing right now.
Surely.
So that needs to be done. And one way of doing this is, of course, training. The other is mentorship. I mean, the best doctors don't want to go to the villages. They don't want to go to the small towns. So if you don't want to go to the small town, why cannot um, you kind of train those people there to work as they are? One is training, of course. The other is, like I said, mentorship, right? So why can't we? Idea could be this one doctor mentors 5 village level practitioners. If, if they do that, how much time is required? You take off 1 hour a week to mentor them, train them, tell them. Yeah, most village level practitioners will be extremely happy to connect with any city level doctor and talk to them about what they're treating, what problems they face, how do they improve their practice. And you just give them 1 hour a week, 2 hours a week, and you have in probably a year, 2 years, you'll have extremely well trained doctors there for
Definitely.
the limited stuff that they need to do. So I think there are solutions that people want to really implement.
So Subir, this was about the different challenges. So how has your journey been? आपका पूरा सफर कैसा रहा? क्या आप शुरू से हेल्थ केयर से कनेक्टेड थे या आपने बाद में ये चॉइस लिया करियर में? And how has been your experience?
Yeah, so I have always been in consulting. I have worked with the Big Four. I was a director at KPMG. I have done strategy for the biggest financial firms. Um, so I've worked with a lot of CEOs in that space. But I thought there's something missing. Finance really didn't get me excited enough to see as a challenge. There's a lot of stuff that you can do there, but it does not really impact the people on the ground. So I said, why don't we think of something else? And that's why I got into healthcare. And मैंने अपनी पहली कंपनी लॉन्च की सेफ ऑफ सर्जिकल केयर लिमिटेड which was into surgical disposables, a lot of stuff that goes into operating theaters. So that was still at a tertiary, uh, secondary tertiary level of care. And primarily because it was into disposables, it catered to a certain segment of the people who could afford this treatment. So once while I was there, I saw a lot of inefficiencies in the whole supply chain, and then I thought, why why don't we get into something that affects the common people even more? Uh, like you said, the problem was always affordability and accessibility. Accessibility is not just limited to accessibility of care, but accessibility of good products for doctors in the outside the cities really. So we said, how do we take care of affordability, right? The biggest cost of a healthcare organization today, beyond after manpower, is procurement, and that is what we decided to attack. So we said, how do we reduce the cost of procurement? How do we work with companies? How do we work with hospitals? How do you work with doctors to reduce the cost of procurement? And how do you get the supplies to people who don't have access to them? Right. So that is the angle that we took to see how we could reduce the cost of healthcare, um, the affordability part of healthcare.
Sure.
So
One
that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Yes, please. So one very important question here, that as being in supply chain, it must have been affected with pre-COVID and post-COVID things. There has been lots
Yes.
of changes because during COVID, the essential things were there, and but yes, we did definitely faced that there was complete challenge in this supply chain of goods, especially medical emergencies and stuff like that, because even it has to reach the remotest pin of India. So you being in this industry, you being closely watching this thing, आपने काफी नजदीक से इन चीजों को देखा है कि जो सप्लाई चेन प्रोसेस है इंडिया में, वो जनरली सारे हॉस्पिटल्स जो है पहले बहुत प्राइस कॉन्शियस होते हैं एंड एट द सेम टाइम दे आर क्वालिटी कॉन्शियस ऑल्सो. कई बार उन्हें जो चीजें वो ऑर्डर देते हैं वो नहीं मिलते और डिलीवरीज कुछ और के मिलती है, डिलेड मिलती है, रश आवर डिलीवरीज होते हैं, रश आवर परचेज ऑर्डर्स होते हैं. तो ये सारा जो जो प्रॉब्लम्स है, ये जो चैलेंजेस है, और मार्केट में बहुत सारे प्लेयर्स हैं जो तरह तरह के सप्लाई चेन इनिशिएटिव्स ऑफर्स दे रहे होते हैं, बट फिर भी हमारा बेसिक चैलेंज क्या है और उसे किस तरह से हम बेटर सॉल्व करने की कोशिश कर सकते हैं सप्लाई चेन में, स्पेशली पोस्ट कोविड.
बेसिक चैलेंज टू फोल्ड है. पहला है, लाइक यू सेड, द सप्लाई चेन. अगर मेरे पास प्रोडक्ट है, हाउ डू आई गेट इट थ्रू to the user, to the hospital, to the doctor, in the best possible way, in the fastest possible time, at the lowest possible cost, right? Traditionally, हमारे country में जो supply chain बना है, that is a multi-layered supply chain. Companies have products, companies take those products to a CNF or a super distributor से जाता है dealer के पास, dealer से probably a sub dealer, and अगर if you're getting into the interiors, नहीं तो वहाँ से hospital या doctor का. For the bigger hospitals, of course, they will talk directly to the manufacturer, and the manufacturer will send directly to them. But again, उसमें inefficiencies होती हैं because that also goes through a distributor more often than not.
Yes.
तो एक साइड वो है. दूसरा साइड का जो inefficiency का reason है, वो that is inside the hospital. Now, if you think of the procurement function of most hospitals, the procurement function of a hospital is not evolved enough. They don't know when to order. Of course, they know, but I wouldn't say they don't know, but they cannot scientifically determine which product to order when, how much inventory of that product they need to keep, right? And how do you stop the amount of breakage, pilferage, expiries to happen? There's a lot of inefficiencies which people don't realize in that part of the process. So, what we are doing is we are talking to hospitals on one side, we are talking to manufacturers on the one side, and we are kind of building up a supply chain that is slightly different. It is not completely misaligned with what is happening, because you cannot do a complete disruption of the supply chain. There are the reasons, of course. You need logistics partners, and you need the logistics partners to work at the same level of efficiency that you would want yourself to.
Definitely.
And so what we're doing is we are trying two things. We are trying direct to the doctor. So just like a e-commerce, you buy something off Amazon or Flipkart, and it comes to your doorstep. And we're also trying a separate model, which requires us to go through a distributor. Now, you rightly said there is, last minute requirements. मुझे आज ही चाहिए. Doctor says रात को 8 बजे कि मुझे कल morning 6 बजे product चाहिए. उसके लिए you need the product close to you. So a distance model will not work. So we are trying a mix of a distance model as well as a model that is close to you. And we're trying to tilt the scales in the favor of the direct ordering model. How do you do that? For that, you need to get into the hospital. You need to get into the purchase function of the hospital.
Yes.
And that is where we're talking to a lot of hospitals, and we're getting good response from the hospital. We started pilots now. We're saying we just don't do this. We also work with you to improve your purchase function. We do a demand forecasting. We come up with scientific models to say this is when you need to order, this is the amount of product you need to keep, and connect them with our systems. So then it becomes a direct pull. And when there is a direct pull, driven by scientifically determined models, the inefficiency is completely reduced. One side of inefficiency is the amount you need to keep, and जो हड़बड़ी में मंगाना पड़ता है वो सब खत्म हो जाता है. और दूसरा, manpower requirement comes down, so it becomes a more frictionless process. Of course, to offset that, हम थोड़ा अपने partners होते हैं, हमारे partners के पास थोड़ा सा product रखते हैं that is still required, because अभी भी that is evolving. तो वो immediate requirement वो थोड़ी कम होती जा रही है. वो जब खत्म हो जाएगी, then we will transition completely in this kind of model. So that is a two-pronged approach that we take.
Shani. Healthcare supply chain में there are so many layers, and इस layers के बीच जो friction है उसको कम करने के लिए I hope your both of the companies, especially the surgical disposables, would be definitely working towards it. One last question, Subir, that India spends a GDP of 3.6% of its GDP on the healthcare. करीब 3.6.
I don't know where I get that figure, because the figure keeps changing, Smita. My estimate is less than 2%.
So yeah,
in real healthcare. In real healthcare.
Real healthcare. So it is still very very less in compared to even our neighboring countries like Bangladesh. So अब आपको क्या लगता है ये spending कितना generous है? और अगर we have this motto of having healthcare for all, what kind of spending should India expect in the coming years so that we are actually making healthcare affordable for all?
This figure that you threw, 2%, 3%, is public spending. If you take into account private spending, that goes to 10, 12%. And that is where the difficulty lies. Thus, 12% of GDP is going to and 8% is going to out of pocket. Today, India doesn't even have outpatient insurance, right? Most countries do. Yes. You go out and walk into, at times you don't want to. A lot of people don't want to go to a doctor because they don't know how affordable it will be. So the answer is a no-brainer, of course. Public spending increase करना है. Public spending increase करने के लिए दो चीजें कर सकते हैं. या तो आप डिस्काउंट करा दो कि जो अपने टर्शरी केयर, सेकेंडरी केयर में हमारे गवर्नमेंट ने बहुत ट्राई किया है. Get आयुष्मान भारत, तुम्हें सर्जरी करनी है, the insurance by the government will cater to a lot of it. But of course, that is a very, very minute portion of the total healthcare spend. The bigger spend happens on a regular basis. This does not even I've seen even with Ayushman Bharat, if someone has to come 300 kilometers to get the benefit of Ayushman Bharat, a lot of people don't come because उनके लिए तो वहाँ पहुँचना और उनके relatives को वहाँ पर रखना वो भी बहुत मुश्किल हो जाता है. वो सब तो हम काउंट ही नहीं करते हैं. तो अगर 1,000-2,000 रुपए दिन का आपको स्पेंड करना है खाली रखने के लिए, आपकी सर्जरी फ्री भी हो रही है, फिर भी आप सोचते हैं इतना मैं
That's
स्पेंड करूं के लिए।
definitely.
तो या स्पेंडिंग तो बढ़ानी है, स्पेंडिंग बढ़ानी है, या फिर आप दूसरा काम कीजिए, विच ऑफ कोर्स यू इंक्रीज द अर्निंग पावर ऑफ पीपल, you make them more affluent, which will not happen in a hurry. So either you give them something in terms of cash for spending on healthcare, or a lot of countries have this healthcare card scheme where you have a card and then you can go, which is a certain percentage of your income or something like that, or you put in insurance. I think there's no other way.
Definitely.
Your private sector will not do it unless there is an incentive. There's a fiduciary monetary incentive. Private sector nahi karega, and you can't even expect them to do that. So yeah,
Okay, any message would you like to give to the young generation जो भी entrepreneurs बनना चाहते हैं, especially जिन्होंने healthcare industry as a sector choice किया है?
I think पहली चीज़ है, it is an extremely great choice because most people, and I'm just talking most people, I've seen a lot of people wanting to start businesses. When most people today want to start businesses, especially if they're well educated, if they've come from affluent backgrounds, if they have, if they are sacrificing something like a good job, they do that because they want to make a difference. They do not do that because they want to earn money. So if you really want to make a difference, healthcare is the place to be. Healthcare and education, these are the two extremely influential areas in the lives of people, and these are two extreme areas which our governments over the past 70 years have neglected. So this is the place to make a difference. Just make sure when you're coming into any entrepreneur, especially this kind of entrepreneurship, which is in a sense somewhat social also, be prepared to be there for the long haul. Things will not move very fast. In fact, I've gone through multiple companies. I, in fact, had started off a telemedicine firm 3-4 years ago, and I saw the kind of resistance there was at that point in time. And this is another way of making it more accessible, of course. But today, things have changed primarily because of COVID. And you just have to stick out with what you're doing. So I'm just thinking that, if I'd stuck on for another 4-5 years, today things would have been very, very different. When I was talking to doctors said, legal issue hai, agar kisi ne maine kuch phone pe bol diya, kuch prescribe kar diya, to kya hoga? Government has come up with something in that sort now. मेरा टाइम कैसे वेस्ट होगा? मैं 400 रुपए तो मैं लोग आते हैं, मैं उसको देख लेता हूँ, मैं इस पे क्यों टाइम वेस्ट करूँ? मैं तो I'm full, right? Most doctors, good doctors, don't have time. मेरे पास time नहीं है करने के लिए. But आज everything all of that has changed, right?
Thanks to COVID, it has got legalized, and all of a sudden they are earning more, I think, on video consultations. Rather than the earning, it has become more so easy and comfortable for the patients to access their doctors. It's really boon to have a video consultation.
But we've got to be careful with telemedicine also. There are places where it should be used, the places where it should not be used.
Yes. So, the guidelines has to be definitely there, and it should
and people will learn along the way. But I'm just saying, mentality कैसे change होती है? पहले डॉक्टर बोलता था कि मेरे पास time नहीं है. I have so many patients waiting outside. Today he's saying I would rather sit at home and do this. So things have changed. But what I'm saying is, be there for the long haul. You will make a difference if you stick it out. There will be times where you think, मैं क्या करूँ, मैं क्यों कर रहा हूँ, ये मेरे को छोड़ के वापस जॉब पे चले जाना चाहिए या कुछ और करना चाहिए. But there are valleys. You just move through those.
Definitely.
But be there. You'll make a difference in the end. Yeah.
So thank you so much, Subir, for these golden words. I hope definitely this would inspire the young entrepreneurs who want to start a business especially in healthcare or education. Thank you so much for joining.
It should also influence people, inspire people who want to join good companies who are trying to do this.
Definitely. And actually the social cause must be there. ये जरूर ख्याल होना चाहिए कि आप कुछ ऐसा कर रहे हैं कि आपकी कंपनी, आपका स्टार्टअप या आपने जो भी प्रोडक्ट या ऑफरिंग बनाई है वो कहीं ना कहीं लोगों को बेनिफिट कर रही है, उनसे उनका भला हो रहा है. थैंक यू सो मच सुबीर फॉर योर टाइम, फॉर स्पेंडिंग विद अस एट मेडिसर्कल, और आपने अपने जो वेंचर्स इनके बारे में इतने अच्छे से एक्सप्लेन किया. Ups and downs are always there with every company, but definitely you are striving towards the victory of both of your firms. So all the best for all your future endeavors. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.